Good morning, members of the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports Affairs, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this committee meeting number 2 for today, Thursday, February 26, 2026. A special welcome is extended to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports, Ms. Melissa D. Gums, and her support staff. We have established a quorum of 8 members and 1 non-member. Please stand for a moment of silence. Correction, we have 11 members. I said 8, correction. We have received notice of lateness from the following members, MP York and MP Ottley. Are there any notifications from the members of Parliament? I see MP Durant would like the floor for notification. MP Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, my honorable colleagues, to the honorable minister and the support staff, those in the Tribune, and a special good morning to the people of Sint Maarten that are tuned in. Mr. Chairman, I got some quite disturbing news over the last couple of days, and yesterday kind of solidified the point for me to bring this here to the full of Parliament. So through you to the Minister of Education. Minister, there have been some reports that basic needs in the public schools are lacking. We're talking about toilet paper, soap, napkin, sanitizer, and basic hygiene stuff that is required. I find it quite unfortunate, especially to add to the fact that a couple of weeks ago, the minister mentioned that no one is allowed to donate to schools. Now, my children have been in the public school system for quite a while now, and not public school, sorry, in the primary school system for quite a while, and we always, as parents, we give water, napkins, and basic stuff. So my question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the minister, are you going to stand steadfast with that rule? Because if you're not able to provide the basic hygiene stuff that the school requires, why are you standing in the way of anyone else doing it? And with that being said, we will be requesting an urgent public meeting in that regard, because that is something that I see as a potential health risk and put our children in jeopardy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Durant. I see MP Lacroes would like the floor for notifications. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
A blessed morning, Mr. Chairman, Griffier, Minister and her support staff, those in the Tribune and my fellow colleagues here in Parliament. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just a few words of thanks to the members of Parliament, the staff of Aruba, with the IPCO and the way we were treated in IPCO, the airport, the protocol. It was something definitely to be happy to have experienced the last week past, and also just the whole IPCO in itself, seeing that I'm not a member of that committee, but I got the privilege to experience it. It was very, very much interesting. And again, thank you to the delegation of Aruba and the ministers, the members of Parliament for their gastvrijheid, we say in Dutch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I see there are no more. Oh, sorry. MP Lewis would like the floor for notification. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Griffier. Good afternoon to the Minister and her support staff. Good afternoon to my honorable colleagues here and those in the Tribune. Mr. Chairman, I would like to give my sincere condolences to the family and fellow loved ones of the individual that they said committed suicide yesterday, and to anyone that have lost a loved one recently. Mr. Chairman, mental health is a serious issue in this country. We have debated, we have discussed this matter, and it's about time that we see the execution on how we can limit or eradicate the level of suicide in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lewis. I see that there are no more. No. MP Arian, you have the floor for notifications.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chairman, I realize that we have a meeting today, obviously, on these reports, but in our faction, we requested, since the article came out, we requested this report, I believe, weeks ago. So I'd like to know if it's, again, on the government side, or is it on our side, why only the reports were only sent to us yesterday at 5 o'clock for a meeting this morning. So can we get clarity on that also?
Thank you, MP Arian. I believe that the minister forwarded the report yesterday, and it was docked in today or this morning. So it has been forwarded to the parliamentary chat, and that's where you could find the report now. MP Lacroes?
Proposal of order, Mr. Chairman. Could we have 15 minutes to peruse the documents, seeing that we just received them, so we are more prepared to be able to handle the meeting that is before us? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. Yes, I will. I look to the other MPs for approval. Yes, that is, we will grant that request. So we will adjourn this meeting for 15 minutes and reconvene at 10:40. 10:40. This meeting is adjourned. Good morning and welcome back to this Central Committee meeting number 2 of the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports. We had taken a 15-minute adjournment to allow the members of Parliament to peruse the incoming documents that were needed for the presentation for agenda point number 2. So we now move on to the agenda points for this meeting. Agenda point number 1, the discussion on the frameworks regarding medical education on the island of St. Maarten, IS 3-370-2025-2026, dated November 20th, 2025. Agenda point 2, the presentation on the results of the early grade reading assessment and early grade mathematics assessment, IS 598-2025-2026, dated January 26, 2026. Agenda point 1 was requested by MP Lacroes, MP Ottley, and MP Lewis. Agenda point 2 was requested by the Minister. We go over to agenda point 1. On November 20th, 2025, Parliament received a letter from MPs Lacroes, Ottley, and Lewis for a meeting for this committee for the Minister, with the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports to discuss the frameworks regulating medical education on the island of St. Maarten. This document is registered under IS 370-2025-2026. All members have received a copy of this document. At this time, I would like to give the floor to the requesters of this meeting to elucidate their request. To who could I give the floor? I see MP Lewis is ready. MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, while in the ministry, we received a request from a medical school that wanted to establish itself here on Sint Maarten. And very excited at that time, the minister and myself, we looked around, asked questions, and saw what and how Sint Maarten could benefit from an extra medical school, seeing that we were also working on the EGRA here on the island. Then, Mr. Chairman, on the 13th of April 2025, we here in Parliament approved the tertiary education law, which then I understood that came with some things that hindered this medical school itself, or maybe I didn't understand it properly. Hence, I requested this meeting so that the minister could explain to Parliament, but also the population and others that might want to bring such a establishment here on St. Maarten, on how to do it and how not to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I now give the floor to the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports for her opening remarks and/or presentation. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to yourself, Griffier, the members of Parliament, those tuned in and listening to us online or otherwise. Mr. Chairman, I'm joined today by my policy advisor, Erin Ellis, my policy advisor, Marvia Cooks, and the division head of examinations, Ms. Yvette Halley, who is here actually for agenda point 2, but decided to grace us with her presence from agenda point 1. I'll dive right into the presentation on medical education and regulatory frameworks for St. Maarten. I would like to start off first with looking at the higher education law and its requirements that affect medical institutions. So Chapter 3 of the Higher Education Law, which is Articles 68 through 72, directly governs accreditation. These articles apply to all higher education institutions on St. Maarten, including AUC and USM. Key points for each article. Article 68 shifts primary accountability for quality to the institutional board itself, so the institution must proactively seek accreditation. Article 69 gives the Minister of Education authority to designate which accreditation...
Sorry, excuse me, Ms. Gums. Can the presentation be sent to Parliament? So
I believe it was sent just while we were sitting here in the late pause.
Okay. members of parliament are having issues?
It was
with the
sent
presentation?
via email during the late pauses, so I believe it could be dropped in the WhatsApp chat.
Okay. Did the members of parliament check the email to see if the presentation was received? Has not been received? We'll adjourn this meeting for 2 minutes while we get the presentation. Good morning and welcome back. The presentation is now visible to all members. Minister Combs, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Article 69 of the Higher Education Law gives the Minister of Education authority to designate which accreditation bodies are acceptable. This is the core legal mechanism that enables the hybrid model that is currently being deployed. Article 70, the 6-year accreditation cycle aligns with current international norms from the Netherlands and ACCM. AUC's existing ACCM cycle already fits this requirement, and this is purely in the context of medical education. Article 71, the 2-year recovery period provides institutions with a safety net which reduces disruption to students in the event of challenges to accreditation. And Article 72, the most consequential article for students, loss of accreditation triggers student protection obligations and public disclosure by the institution. For AUC specifically, compliance will largely be a matter of formal government recognition of ACCM as a designated body. Their existing accreditation process already meets the spirit of these articles. The accreditation hybrid model and its implications for medical education. The accreditation framework recommends a hybrid accreditation model for Sint Maarten. For medical education specifically, this means, on the government side, that government does not directly evaluate AUC's medical curriculum. Instead, it evaluates and formally designates which accreditation bodies, like ACCM, are qualified. This is a practical measure. The government lacks the specialized medical expertise to directly assess a school of medicine, but it can assess whether ACCM meets governance, transparency, and quality standards. On the accreditations body side, bodies like ACCM bring the medical expertise. They evaluate the curriculum, the faculty, facilities, and student outcomes against internationally recognized standards. Their existing infrastructure for site visits, self-studies, and expert panels handles the technical assessment. The beauty of this model for Sint Maarten is that it leverages existing frameworks without needing to build new and costly infrastructure. AUC keeps its ACCM accreditation, the government formally recognizes ACCM as a designated body, and the legal requirement of the higher education law is satisfied. Local context for medical education in Sint Maarten. Sint Maarten's higher education landscape is shaped by only 2 institutions. For medical education specifically, the sole provider is the American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine, AUC, which offers the Doctor of Medicine degree, MD. A critical point here is the current regulatory gap. There's no local formal accreditation body. The law on higher education thus closes this gap by requiring all institutions, including AUC, to hold recognized accreditation to legally operate on the island. Importantly, the ministry has decided not to establish its own accreditation body due to financial and resource constraints. Instead, the strategy is to evaluate and recognize existing internationally established bodies using a hybrid model. The government sets the standard for accreditation, but private accrediting bodies are responsible for evaluating institutions and making accreditation decisions. AUC's current accreditation with ACCM. AUC's current accreditation, as mentioned, comes from the Accreditation Commission on Colleges of Medicine, ACCM, which is a recognized regional body. Some key points that I'd like to emphasize, Mr. Chairman. The ACCM standards of accreditation for schools of medicine are the specific standards that AUC must meet. AUC most recently passed reaccreditation in November 2021 with 0 findings, which is a strong result. The 6-year validity period aligns with what St. Maarten's law prescribes as the standard accreditation cycle for all higher education. The self-study every 2 years demonstrates that accreditation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of accountability. AUC itself has confirmed it will work with ACCM to ensure any new programs also comply with their standards before launch. Sorry, 1 second. ACCM's evaluation against framework criteria. So the research framework evaluated accreditation bodies across 6 categories. For the Accreditation Commission on Colleges of Medicine, ACCM, the results were strong. For governance, they scored a 5 out of 5. ACCM has a clear, well-communicated mission and operates within a solid legal framework. Resources, they scored 4 out of 5. They're sufficient for evaluations with room to grow. Quality assurance, 4 out of 5, with solid ongoing review processes in place. Transparency, 4 out of 5, decisions are communicated openly. Relationship with institutions, 4 out of 5, they respect institutional autonomy while still maintaining accountability. And accreditation requirements, 4 out of 5, clear standards for all institutions are outlined for them to meet. Overall, ACCM is well regarded and aligns closely with the criteria proposed in St. Maarten's accreditation framework. This makes it a natural candidate for formal recognition by the government following the enactment of the higher education law. For regional options, you have CAM-HP. While AUC is currently accredited by ACCM, the accreditation framework also identifies CAAM-HP, the Caribbean Accreditation Authority for Education in Medicine and Other Health Professions, as a relevant regional body. CAM-HP exemplifies the regional accreditation model described in the literature review. Multiple SIDs collaborate to create a shared accreditation process that pools resources and reduces individual cost burdens. For St. Maarten, CAM-HP is relevant because it is designed for the Caribbean context and understands the unique pressures faced by small island nations. Its existence demonstrates that regional solutions are viable and effective for medical education quality assurance. It received a slightly lower resource rating, 3 out of 5, than ACCM, mainly due to room for improvement in accessibility of resources, but still meets the framework's baseline criteria. Some key takeaways, Mr. Chairman, regarding medical education accreditation in St. Maarten. AUC, as mentioned, already operates under a credible, internationally recognized accreditation standard, ACCM. This is not a gap to be filled, it is more a foundation to build on. The existing ACCM framework maps naturally onto what St. Maarten's law requires, and so the transition should be smooth. CAM-HP offers a regional complement, useful if St. Maarten wants to participate in Caribbean-wide quality assurance frameworks as the island's education sector grows. The hybrid model is a practical solution. It avoids the cost of establishing a new body and leverages international expertise where the government has resource constraints. AUC itself has been a willing partner in this process with stakeholder buy-in from the very beginning. Stakeholder buy-in from the institution is a critical success factor, and it is already in place. Additionally, my predecessor approved the accreditation framework in April 2024, and so that implementation will be part of the roadmap for the higher education ordinance as it continues through its trajectory. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman, but I thank you for the opportunity to provide some clarity to the state of medical education on St. Maarten. I would like to state as well, Mr. Chairman, as the ministry continues to legislate and professionalize many areas in our education ecosystem that have gone unaddressed and unregulated for decades, it is also important to understand that the ways in which we've operated as a small island nation are no longer tenable if we intend to provide a viable future for our young people. With the higher education ordinance in place, and the supervision of education ordinance on its way, persons and institutions, no matter what they may promise or proclaim they can do for us, must be subjected to the laws of our land, regardless of who their local reps might be. If we do not respect our laws, rules, and regulations, we can never expect total strangers to do so. Additionally, there is such a thing as market saturation, and that is also something that the ministry is carefully looking at in our education ecosystem to ensure that there is regulation, there is oversight, and that we do not let it continue to run rampant as it has in the past. And with that, I thank you, and I await any questions from members of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, for that presentation. I now look over to the members of Parliament for any questions pertaining to the minister's presentation. I see MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one question to the minister, because we started the presentation directly into accreditation. My question to the minister is, if the minister could give us a small synopsis of what takes place before the accreditation. What is the part of this government or the government in the country, what is required of them to even be able to reach to that point to have a discussion about accreditation? That is the one and only question I have for the minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I see MP Sarah Westcott-Williams would like to have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good morning to you, to our support staff, a good morning to the minister and her support staff, and of course, a good morning to my colleagues and all tuned into this meeting. Minister, thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman, for the presentation. My question has to do with the establishment of the AUC. And at the time of the agreement for AUC to permanently establish itself in Sint Maarten, the agreement was made between the government at the time and myself in particular with AUC to grant scholarships to local persons. I have understood that that program is still in place. What I would like to know from you, Minister, if you could give us an overview of, since the institution of that particular agreement, how many were able to make use of it and what the status is of the students, so in terms of numbers, making use of that facility today. Mr. Chairman, just that you know, I don't need the answers today here, unless the minister has them readily available, but I would like them to be provided to Parliament as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott-Williams. I now see MP Durant would like to have the floor. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Minister for the presentation. For me, the presentation was pretty clear. My question was along the lines of the one of MP Lacroes. So with that being said, I had another follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, through you to the Minister. I know that about over a decade ago, the AUC was pardoned 30 million guilders, if my memory serves me correct. There were a lot of requirements and expectations that they had to live up to. I would like to know through you if the minister can provide any information from the ministry as to the obligations that they had to live up to, where they live up to, now that we're over a decade later, and if not, what can be done for us to follow up on the benefits that had to benefit Sint Maarten in regards to that 30 million guilder pardon. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Durant. I now see MP Webster would like to have the floor. MP, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and good morning to my colleagues, and good morning and welcome to the Minister and her support staff. My question is related to, at the end of the presentation, the Minister mentioned the word saturation. So I was wondering if it is that medical schools are saturated, the market for medical schools. Through you, Mr. Chairman, is the market for medical schools saturated on Sint Maarten right now, according to the ministry? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Webster. I now see that MP Weaver would like to have the floor. MP Weaver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to Griffier, Honorable Minister, support staff, and my honorable colleagues here today and those listening and viewing via whichever media. My question is also in line as to what MP Janssen said. Earlier, MP Lacroes stated that there was a request prior for a medical institution. Does government have a cap as to say for how many institutions in whatever sector it is would be allowed for St. Maarten in that sense, based on the need? That'll be all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Rava. I see that there are no more questions from the members of parliament. I'll now look to the minister. Minister, do you need a few minutes to discuss with your team? 10 minutes, 5 minutes? 5 minutes. We'll adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes to give the minister time to provide the answers. Meeting adjourned until 11. Good morning and welcome back to this Central Committee meeting number 2 of the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth, Sports. Before the adjournment, members of Parliament pose questions to the Minister pertaining to her presentation. I now pass the floor over to the Minister for her answers to those questions. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just dive right into it. Regarding the question from MP Lacroes, synopsis about what takes place before reaching the discussion about accreditation. Institutions need to be accredited via one of the bodies that is in the accreditation framework. The HAM that is being finalized, where recognition would be given to those accreditation bodies, and then schools would have to approach those bodies to be accredited by them. That is part of the roadmap for the implementation of the Higher Education Ordinance, which of course encompasses that LB. MP Westcott-Williams and MP Duran, I actually have already asked AUC for this information. However, that has to go through their channels as well. I was hoping to get it before today's meeting, but I have not. However, I have followed up, so once I have it, I will be able to send it in writing because it's something we are anticipated being a question, so it's already been requested. It's in Webster. Regarding saturation, I didn't say that it was saturated right now, but it is something that I consider. I think realistically, we have to understand that we're 16 square miles with a set number of students. And if you even look at classroom sizes at lower levels and high schools, they are quite small. So saturation is a risk. Something that we're discussing internally and trying to identify. And that ties into MP Waver's question on caps. If that has to come, then that will be the discussion that the ministry has and the decision that we will have to make. And I think that was it for the questions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. I see that MP Lacroes would like to have the floor. MP Lacroes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think the minister didn't understand my question. I'm going to maybe try to rephrase it. Before a medical school is established on Sint Maarten, the first request would be requesting a business license, a managing director's license, finding a location, classrooms, whatever. What are the steps after that? What are those steps? That is the question that I'm asking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, MP Lacroes, for clarifying. I did understand the question, but the reality is getting a business license does not entitle you to being recognized as an institution of higher learning on Sint Maarten. Accreditation is what allows you to be recognized as such an institution. So that is the steps that would be taken from the government side. Regarding that point, though, I think it is important to note that I always champion collaboration between ministries because that is a disconnect, that persons receive a business license with no consultation with the Ministry of ECYS on these types of matters. And then we run into these discussions right now. So accreditation is the Ministry of ECYS's role, and whatever has been received from any other ministry does not have bearing on that because that is the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I look to MP Lacroes. Does that answer the question? Yield? Okay. I see no other members of Parliament have any questions. MP Durant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to confirm, because I heard the minister kind of fuse my point and the point of MP Westcott together, that the question was already posed. Were you referring to the question that MP Westcott posed, or both questions were already posed to AUC, and the ministry is awaiting a response? Thank you. Just wanted clarity on that.
Thank you, MP. The Minister?
Yes, both have already been posed to AUC. So I will await those answers and send them once you get them in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And I'll look to the floor. If there is no need for additional deliberations, going once, twice, I will now close this agenda point. Agenda point closed. We now go over to agenda point number 2 for the morning. On January 26, 2026, Parliament received a letter from the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports requesting a meeting of this committee in order to present the results of the early grade reading assessment and the early grade mathematics assessment. This document is registered under IS-598-2025-2026. All members have received a copy of this document. At this time, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports for opening remarks and or presentation. Mr. Gums, once again, you have the floor. 1 second while we get it together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought we would have had a 2-minute break to swap out presentations, but never mind. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present the results of the 2025 EGRA project. I would like to state for the record that this has been presented and provided to all school managers and where relevant school boards, as well as the student care teams at each school. Following this meeting, there will be further follow-up with the schools to address the recommendations and identify any overlaps with solutions already being worked on within the ministry. Exempt from this assessment, Mr. Chairman, were the private schools, Learning Unlimited and Caribbean International Academy, CIA. However, for 2027, I have asked division examinations to consider including them in the assessment project for the sake of comparing best practices in literacy and numeracy development across the entire education ecosystem of Sint Maarten. So without further ado, the project history. In 2023, this project was supported by the NRPB, the World Bank, and the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. It was led by the Division of Exams with the support of 2 international consultants. The first evaluation was done in March 2023 with Group 3. That is a COVID cohort that started during the COVID lockdown. The results were presented in Q3 of 2024. Pupils' report cards were distributed evenly with a remediation report. In 2025, the assessment was run again, this time including Group 5. So this Group 5 that was assessed in 2025 is the former Group 3 of the 2023 batch. This was done to see if there had been any improvements in the 2 years since they were previously assessed in Group 3. The Group 3 of 2025 that did not start obviously in a lockdown, underwent the same tests as 2023 for comparability's sake. There were no lesson observations this time, there were shorter questionnaires, and 50% of the assessors were the same as the ones in 2023. Assessors were financed by the NRPB, overall though the project was financed primarily by the Ministry of ECYS. There was also a new approach to the math testing using MCQ, as well as reading fluency and reading comprehension. So the early grade reading assessment Group 3 results. I want to just remind the public and the members of Parliament, the following slides are showing you a comparison between the 2023 cohort, which were children that began their educational careers during the COVID lockdown, and the 2025 cohort of the same age and group who did not begin their educational careers during any type of pandemic lockdown. We have here the mean scores by subtask. Yeah. Mean scores by subtask. These are timed tasks. Students were timed on each of these subtasks. Some improvements can be noted between the Group 3 of 2023 and the Group 3 of 2025. However, it remains below optimal ranges. Correct letters per minute, so how many letters can be identified within the timed task. In 2023, we saw the average score at 53.6% versus 2025, 61.2%. Correct words per minute, 17.3% in 2023 versus 28.2% in 2025. This is how many words can be identified during the timed exercise. And perhaps most troublesome, Mr. Chairman, oral reading fluency in 2023 had an average score of 23%, and in 2025, the average had increased to 43.6%. The percentage correct by subtask, untimed tasks. I want to preface this by explaining what a phoneme is for the members of Parliament and for the public. A phoneme is a unit of sound in a specified language that distinguishes one word from another. For example, with P, B, D, and T in the English words pad, pat, bad, and bat. Since this assessment also included the Dutch stream, I find it important to note this because you might wonder, well, letter recognition shouldn't be difficult or different in Dutch since it's the same alphabet. However, the differentiation comes when we throw phonemes into the mix because, for example, the letter E in Dutch corresponds to the English sound of the letter A, and the letter I in Dutch sounds like the letter E in English. Finally, Dutch has a more complex vowel system than English, with more vowels and a more consistent phonetic spelling system. So for English in 2023, 22% of the cohort got their phonemes correct, and in 2025, 78%, so a marked improvement. On sound words, 30% got their sound words correct versus 72% in 2025, which is a positive sign. Listening comprehension is the ability to understand and interpret spoken language, so understanding spoken words, phrases, and sentences, and identifying details, implied meanings, etc. 18% scored correctly when it came to listening comprehension in 2023 versus 73% in 2025. And for reading comprehension, the ability to understand, interpret, and analyze written text and connect it to prior knowledge and critical thinking skills, in 2023, 9% were able to correctly do this task versus 58% in 2025. This is an improvement, however, still lower than what a country should want its Group 3 literacy rate to be at. The mean scores by subtask, time task in the Dutch stream, as was done with English, students were timed on correct letters per minute, correct words per minute, and oral reading fluency. Correct letters by minute in 2023 was 41.4% versus 43% in 2025. 16.1% was the average score for correct words per minute versus 30.6% in 2025. 14% was the average score for oral reading fluency in 2023 versus 33.6% in 2025.
MP, excuse me, Minister, MP area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in terms of the presentation, the minister is mentioning the comparison, which I understand, but what I think I'm missing, and if the minister could just mention it at least, is like what the average or the number that we're looking towards. The minister mentioned just now that is lower than the average we expect, but the number isn't stated anywhere in the presentation. The target, yeah. So if we could just mention it as we go along the presentation.
Thank you, MP. Minister.
So, sorry. US data benchmarks show that 20 to 30 words per minute is usually the typical gain that you see in one trimester. So that's the target we're looking for. Thank you. Apologies for not having that on the slide. For percentage correct by subtask, on-time task for the Dutch stream, for Dutch in 2023, 80% of the cohort got their phonemes correct, and in 2025, we saw an improvement to 88%. 68% in 2023 got their sound words correct versus 82% in 2025. 55% scored correctly when it came to listening comprehension versus 83% in 2025. And for reading comprehension in the Dutch stream, 19% scored correctly in 2023 versus 58% in 2025. I'll now move on to the early grade mathematics assessment for Group 3. Mean scores by subtask, all tasks. Number identification. Number identification is recognizing numbers and understanding the quantities associated with each number. So this is the basis for preparing children for receiving more complex mathematical concepts as they get older and progress in their academic journey. In 2023, 34.2% was the average score for number identification versus 36.3% in 2025. Number discrimination. Number discrimination is the ability to identify and compare the number of items in a set. This sets the stage for comprehending basic operations like addition and subtraction, as well as more complex concepts like fractions and decimals. In 2023, the average score in the English stream was 4.9% versus 5% in 2025. Missing number refers to values that are absent from a sequence, a pattern, or an equation, and then these would need to be identified using logic or mathematical rules. You find these types of problems in arithmetic, algebra, and statistics, and they form a crucial part in developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So for example, when you see 2, 4, blank, 8, the missing number would be 6. For 2023, the average score for missing number tasks was 6.2% versus 4.6% in 2025. Additions per minute. Additions per minute is where students are asked to quickly recall addition facts, which builds math fact fluency. In 2023, 6.1% was the average versus 6.6% in 2025. For subtractions per minute, following the same concept as additions per minute, in 2023, subtractions per minute had an average score of 4.8% versus 4.1% in 2025. Problem solving. Problem solving refers to the process of finding solutions to mathematical questions or challenges. So understand the problem, make a plan, carry out the plan, and review the solution. Problem solving also requires on reading comprehension, being a mastered skill. In 2023, the average score for problem solving was 2.2% versus 2.5% in 2025. If we look at the same mean scores by subtask in the Dutch stream, for number identification, 16.5% in 2023 versus 20.5% in 2025. For number discrimination, 4.6% in 2023 versus 4.9% in 2025. For missing number tasks, 6.4% versus 4.5% in 2025. Additions per minute, 5.5% in 2023 versus 7.4% in 2025. Subtractions per minute, 3.7% in 2023 versus 4.8% in 2025. And problem solving, 2.1% in 2023 versus 2.7% in 2025. Presenting and interpreting national standards, just to explain a bit on how these are presented. So the ratings are mastery, where a student has demonstrated a deep understanding of the knowledge, concepts, and skills. The student is ready for new challenges to extend their thinking. For developing, this means the student has some knowledge, concepts, and skills. There's a clear pattern to their mistakes, and remediation through coaching and practice can correct misunderstandings and get them to mastery. And for emerging, that means the student is at the beginning of acquiring sufficient knowledge of the concepts and skills for the grade level and needs reteaching, opportunities to practice, and continued assessment to improve. For the early grade reading assessment benchmarking, you can see a bit more also for MP Arian's elucidation. Letters per minute that is expected at a mastery level, 44 plus. Phonemes correct to accomplish a mastery level, 41% plus. Sound words should be at 60% plus. Words per minute, etc. For the early grade mathematics assessment benchmarking, numbers identified per minute should be 56 or more. Number discriminated should be 60% for 10 items. Missing numbers, 60%. Additions per minute, 10 plus, and so forth. The graph on the right to the screen highlights that we have 85% emerging overall, 7% at developing, and 8% at mastery. Letters proficiency per minute. To explain a bit, in the Dutch streams, we have 20% at emerging, 30% at developing, and 50% at mastery. And for English, 8% emerging, 13% developing, and 79% at mastery, at group 3 in 2025. Correct words per minute, we have 43% overall mastery and 41% still emerging. There is also, to be noted, a gap between public and subsidized schools. Public schools are at 69% emerging, and subsidized schools are at 31% emerging, a critical disparity between our school systems. Group 3, comprehension skills. We have a listening comprehension, 73% mastery overall. Dutch at 81%, English at 70%, and between subsidized and public schools, 77% versus 61%. At reading comprehension, 46% mastery overall. In English streams, 48%, in Dutch streams, 39%, and 39% remain emerging. Oral reading fluency, so being able to read aloud, 37% mastery overall. In the English stream, 41% mastery, in the Dutch, 24%, and at public schools, very troubling, 68% are emerging in oral reading fluency. Group 3, foundational skills excellence. Phoneme mastery was at 87%. Strong phonemic awareness across both languages, actually. Dutch at 92%, English at 86%. Sound word proficiency, 79%. Solid decoding skills are present in most students overall, with subsidized schools at 84%. The public school gap shows 16% emerging in phonemes and versus 5% in subsidized schools. In mathematics performance, at number identification, we have 85% emerging overall. Major foundational gaps exist in this rating. At number discrimination, 86% developing overall. Most pupils do show foundational understanding of quantity comparison. In missing number, we have 39% mastery in the subsidized schools. Public schools lag at 28% mastery and 39% emerging. Addition fluency, 44% developing, 17% mastery overall. And subtraction fluency, 73% emerging overall. Problem solving had 49% mastery overall, one of the stronger math areas, with subsidized schools at 57% mastery. I move on to Group 5. So just as a reminder, Group 5 is the 2023 Group 3 cohort that started their education journey during COVID. Excuse me. For Group 5 standards, mastery is where the learner demonstrates full understanding of mathematical concepts and procedures in a given domain. Developing, the learner shows partial understanding, needs more practice to improve accuracy and consistency. At emerging, the learner requires significant support and remediation to acquire foundational concepts. Mastery for English at reading comprehension for 6 items. Mastery would mean 5 to 6 items correct. For listening comprehension, 4%. And for oral reading fluency, 110 to 120 words per minute. I must note that the standards for Group 5 oral reading fluency is actually double that of Group 3, so approximately 50 to 100 words per minute. And roughly mastery is when the child makes 1 error max per domain, so per 4 to 7 items. Excuse me, 1 second. There we go. So, Group 5 reading performance overall. For Group 5, there was a demonstration of 25% mastery for oral reading fluency, which is quite concerning for that grade level. Listening comprehension showed mastery scores of 38%, while 35% were rated as emerging. Reading comprehension had a 49% mastery rating, with 25% still at an emerging rating. And oral reading fluency was at 46% emerging. So Group 5's reading performance overall, oral reading fluency, if we look at the comparison, emerging, the subsidized schools had 39% and public schools 66%. Listening comprehension had mastery levels of 17% in public schools, 45% in subsidized schools. And reading comprehension mastery in subsidized schools was at 53%. For Group 5, with regards to mathematics, in numbers and numeration, we see 39% mastery overall. There is a bit of a gap between the languages there, so English at 48%, Dutch at 12% for the streams. In fractions, we had 69% emerging, 13% mastery overall. Mastery in subsidized schools was at 16% versus 3% in public schools. For multiplication and division, we had 80% emerging with 2% mastery overall. This is a critical weakness across all groups. For problem solving, 64% emerging with 11% mastery overall, and public schools at 86% emerging. For addition and subtraction in group 5, we had 29% mastery overall, with public schools at 60% emerging versus subsidized at 39%. And for measurement and geometry, we had 31% mastery overall, which shows relatively stronger performance. I'll move on now, Mr. Chairman, to the results from a student questionnaire that was provided to students for them to answer specific questions regarding their experience at school, their experience with reading and mathematics. So language matters was one of the areas of the questionnaire. So the question was asked, do you speak English at home? Out of 442 responses, we had 67% say always, with 4% at never. 12% say frequently, and 70% say sometimes. When asked if they speak Dutch at home, 61% of respondents said never, 33% sometimes, 3% frequently, and 4% always. When questioned about reading habits, do you observe your parents reading at home? 43% said no, 57% said yes. How many books are there in your house? 14% said no books in the house at all. 40% said between 1 and 10 books, so few books. And 46% said more than 10 books. About how much time do you usually spend reading for school or reading to have fun? 41% said less than 1 hour a day. 21% said less than 1 hour a week. 22% said more than 1 hour a day. And 15% said they never read for school or to have fun. When questioned about home support, students were asked, are you asked to read aloud at home? 48% said they're never asked to read aloud at home. 42% said sometimes, and 10% said frequently. Does someone read stories to you at home? 43% said they're never read to at home. 44% said sometimes, and 13% said frequently. What is your parents' reaction when you get bad grades? 48% said they receive gentle support. 34% said they receive blame or are sanctioned, punished, and 21% said they're asked for an explanation, and 10% said there's absolutely no reaction when they get bad grades. When asked if they take after-school lessons in addition to school, 40% said for math, yes, 39% for language, yes, 5% for another language, and 53% said they take no after-school lessons at all. When asked about student-teacher interactions, what is the reaction of the teacher when you give a correct response? 79% said they receive encouragement, 41% said they receive reward, 6% get no reaction, 5% they don't know, and 1% had other reasons. What is the reaction of the teacher when you give an incorrect response? 47% said they receive correction of the answer, 44% said they are gently explained their error, 18% said they get no reaction, 13% said they are blamed or punished, and 7% said they don't know. When asked about ICT presence and usage, which of the following do you have and can use at home? Take all that apply. 85% said they have an internet connection, 81% said they have a table or a desk to study at, 76% had a tablet, 56% had a quiet place to study, and 48% were carrying a smartphone. I just want to remind everybody this is group 1 and group 3 and group 5. So grade 1 and grade 3. So 6 years of age to about 8, 9 years of age. What ICT devices do you use to learn at home? 72% said they have a tablet, 40% said a smartphone, 29% a computer, 13% nothing. How often do you use apps and websites at home for learning? 42% said they never use apps or websites for learning at home. 14% said more than an hour a day. 15% said an hour a day. And 28% said less than an hour a day. If we look at some regression analysis on oral reading fluency, Students who use the school language at home tend to perform better in reading fluency, indicating that, of course, language exposure outside of school enhances comprehension and decoding skills. Access to digital learning tools, or uses of a tablet at home, correlates with stronger reading performance, suggesting that technology may reinforce literacy skills, however, with moderation and introduction of more traditional literacy development tools. Parent encourages child for good grades. It means parental motivation to the child has a positive influence on reading achievement, emphasizing the role of home support in academic engagement. And positive reinforcement from teachers supports improved reading outcomes. For number identification, language of assessment in English, students assessed in English actually scored higher, possibly reflecting differences in curriculum familiarity or language proficiency. When we look at gender, girls perform slightly lower than boys, a marginally significant difference suggesting small gender-based performance gaps. Regular reading at home is linked to stronger numeracy performance as well, indicating cross-domain benefits of literacy practices and home support. Consistent with the ratings in literacy, students using the school's language at home show higher numeracy performance as well. And of course, supportive teacher feedback enhances numeracy outcomes across the board. When we look at key recommendations, the first was, of course, to strengthen teacher support systems, so address those teachers who express a lack of adequate support through enhanced professional development, training in time and task management, workload management, and resource provision. Prioritize ICT training, so provide advanced ICT training to meet high teacher demand and support digital transformation in teaching. This is being addressed partially via the development of the MMIS, a trust fund project that will include training and development for teachers in not just the MMIS system, but in the web-based training platform that is also being developed. Address resource inequity, so ensure equitable distribution of learning materials. Many educators express a lack of adequate resources. From the public education side, this is being addressed through the transformation of public education project that is currently being executed in collaboration with SOAB. It involves a critical look at resource deployment and access, particularly in terms of budget, and on a wider scale will also require that we look at how we as a country allow education to be developed in non-public schools. Targeted public school interventions. It's recommended to implement intensive reading fluency and computational fluency programs in public schools to close persistent achievement gaps. While this is something, Mr. Chairman, I have actively encouraged even prior to becoming minister, I would also like to use this platform to encourage anyone who would like to contribute to public schools to be aware that one of the best things you can donate to children in any school is your time. Your time to read to them, to have conversations that also contribute to improving their literary skills and cognitive development, to encourage them to focus on developing the skills we've highlighted in this presentation. If I tie this back to the very valid statements that are made that parents are busy, unable to do it themselves, or unable to facilitate, then it's even more important that we focus our energies on being the community that is needed for education to thrive in Sint Maarten. 5, focus on computational literacy. Urgent intervention is, of course, needed in multiplication and division and in subtraction, and to build on our strengths. So leverage strong phonemic awareness, listening comprehension, and problem-solving skills as foundations for further growth. And Mr. Chairman, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to state, Mr. Chairman, these results are deeply concerning to me and my ministry, and they should be of grave concern to the entire country, because this impacts not just how our students are performing now in school, but it impacts the workforce that we are developing for the future of country Sint Maarten. This is not strictly a Sint Maarten issue, however, it does need our full attention and all possible resources to properly address it. And I want to be clear that resources does not always mean money. The same results we're seeing here, we see in our neighbors to the north, where high school students are struggling with word and number recognition in the collectivité. We see it in other islands as well. And we also hear the same challenges of 13-year-olds having a challenge with basic spelling and grammar in the United States, in Canada, and in the Netherlands. With this data, we can see where we're already addressing certain items and where we need to pay more attention as a ministry and furthermore as a country. Many of the challenges we see popping up in education are socioeconomic issues that, of course, requires collaboration with the Ministry of P2025 to ensure that we address these matters and help these students before they become the Ministry of Justice's problem. But most critically, a shift in the way in which we approach teaching, even the very profile of what a teacher should be, and the way we regard children is what will move the needle forward on improvement in these assessments. I thank you again for the opportunity to present these reports to the members of Parliament, and I await any questions.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, for that elaborate and informative presentation. I now look to the members of Parliament for questions pertaining to the presentation. I see we have MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am happy to hear from the minister that she said these numbers and statistics are worrisome. I tried to stay on the chair because it just kept sinking deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Well, Mr. Chairman, and I see that the presentation or the numbers that the minister mentioned, she maybe just received them this year, or when did these numbers come to the minister? That is one question. And what I am missing in the presentation, what is the plan of government to address these issues? And if the government or the ministry has a plan on how to move forward to get these gaps closed in advising parents, teachers themselves moving forward, I would like to see that plan. Then, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I've mentioned before is making sure that we're taking care of our teachers. I've stood in a classroom myself and had to give away most of my salary helping students to be able to just survive the day. And I've known from a lot of my ex-colleagues that they are still experiencing these shortcomings in the schools, from school boards, from parents, but most from government. So I'd like to hear from the minister also, what is her plan when it relates to that aspect, seeing that in order for me to get, or my children to reach the point where they need to reach, I need the teachers. And in order for the teachers to be able to do that, they need to stop worrying on how they're going to survive themselves. Small example, a teacher finishes her study at the age of 24 years and starts teaching, watching the salary scale that we have now. After 20 years, her salary doesn't move anymore. So it means that 40, 45 years, she has no increase in her salary. And that is a problem. That is a problem that is demotivating to anyone that wants to teach. So if the minister has a plan on taking care of that also, so let's take care of the teachers, and in return, the teachers will take care of the kids. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. We now move on to MP Webster. MP Webster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm really trying my best to formulate my questions since receiving this report today. And I think why it bothers me that we received the report so late and that I have to mention it, because I'm trying my best. But why I have to mention it is because this is something that I have asked about last year. And one of the first things that the minister mentioned just now in her opening statements was that the first presentation was done in Q3 of 2024 for the first part, the first cohort. And I remember asking about us receiving that information one of the first times that the minister was here, and we did not receive that. Now I have it, and because of the way how my brain works, I need to put these things next to each other and look at the Dutch versus the English and then formulate my questions, because I have questions such as, has anything been done looking at the differences in the Dutch versus the English schools? Does the ministry see where Dutch might be an issue, especially when it comes to maths, etc., for the children in schools who are in the Dutch stream. The minister mentioned that there was a survey done about Dutch children speaking Dutch at home, and it came out around 75%. If I don't know, because I'll have to go look back at the numbers, somewhere in the 70s anyway. But I remember that in census, we also had that number, so which shows that the numbers are aligning. So that always shows accuracy in the data. It is so. It's around 75, 72, around that amount percentage of homes on Sint Maarten where people speak English. Also, the percentage that speaks Dutch aligns as well, is also clear in the census. But then I will take the time to thank the minister for bringing this to Parliament. I too am concerned seeing what has been presented, and I have been concerned for a while because when I was a minister, I was around in the Q3 presentation, so I was privy to the presentation back then, and that's why I had asked for the numbers so that we could have the follow-up here and so that we could ask certain questions. However, no, we got it today. I don't know if it's possible. I have a proposal since the data came in so late, and it's a very important topic, and seeing the gravity of the situation and the numbers that we are seeing here, if we can have time to prepare our questions in a normal way so that we can exercise our parliamentary oversight on this matter and take it serious, because I cannot ask the questions that I want to ask now. I have a whole lot of papers in front of me. A lot of it is AI generated, but the meat of it, I cannot. So if please, I don't know if the others agree, but I would like to prepare my questions better. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Webster. We now move on to MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I get a gist of my colleague who spoke before me in terms of the request. I agree, I support that request for another meeting on the matters encompassed in this report. And that being said, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the minister. Minister, you mentioned that this particular review, survey, etc., was done in collaboration with the NRPB and the World Bank. And so my question is, has there been any synchronization with what has been done towards this project and the different items for education in the lunch packet? So any synchronization between these matters. And for me, extremely important, and while it's, of course, disheartening to be confronted with what we have been confronted with, my question is, and what now? With this information at hand, you know, what now? I hope this is not going to be a report that, of course, we all, not even a wow moment, it's just a moment of what you hear out there kind of hitting you in your face right now with the results. And I hope this report is not added to many of the reports that, whether we got them from or via the Lands Packet or the NRPB, are being shelved. And the two most common reasons mentioned for shelving these reports are capacity and, capacity and funds. That's the main things that are always mentioned. So specifically to that is, so now what? What is the plan of approach following this, or any other approach that deals with these kinds of issues? And I want to tie into that question, the question of regarding the results of our students, etc. Is there any collaboration, formal or informal, with the other Dutch Caribbean countries? And what you notice more and more is that there are several agreements between governments and institutions, especially between the three Dutch Caribbean countries, and whether it be on the airport, on the airports, health, etc., etc. So, is there any formal agreement with the other Dutch Caribbean countries, or just collaboration, informal as it might be? And then with respect, I want to touch on a matter that, first I want to ask the minister if the Council of Ministers of Sint Maarten has had the opportunity to discuss national priorities and challenges and discuss them between all ministries that are affected by these items. You would recall, Mr. Chairman, that several months ago, I suggested to the Council of Ministers of Sint Maarten to please retreat for a day or two, discuss the state of this country, and come up with proposals and views as to how we can move forward. I've understood that retreat, or the beginning of such, was held, and so I want to tie my question: has the Council of Ministers had the opportunity to discuss the national issues of Sint Maarten across all ministries, is my question. And then I want to go into the matter of teachers and teachers' recruitment. And can the minister tell us what percentage of our teachers overall are working based on work permits? So these are persons we attract from abroad to teach. And is there some understanding regarding how we treat these particular requests, be it government to a lesser effect, I would hope, but especially the subsidized school boards, when permission is sought to bring a teacher in from abroad to teach? I have understood, for example, that whether it's a policy or whatever it is, teachers, like many other professions, if given the permission to come to work on Sint Maarten, teach on Sint Maarten, and together or subsequently ask for their spouse to be admitted, that usually happens, I guess, because of the family unit principle. However, the spouse is mostly, and I would like to know if it is mostly, is denied the possibility to work. But this is something that we kind of just fooling ourselves for a period of time. Because if you're going to get a teacher coming here to work, and then his or her spouse is also allowed to come to Sint Maarten but can't work, it's just a matter of time before that teacher would ask if, please, their spouse can work. And if we continue to say no to the spouse, we're actually, again, fooling ourselves, because we know what the cost of living is like on Sint Maarten. So all of these type of things, to me, would contribute to the mental state of our teachers. So again, how is that particular part being looked at? I know that is not the Ministry of ECYS primarily, but again, These kind of things should be things that the Council of Ministers in its totality can discuss about our country and matters and challenges regarding our country. So if the Minister of ECYS can gather some type of information regarding that latter part as well, I would be grateful for such. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. I now see that MP Roseberg would like to have the floor. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Blessed, it's almost 12, so I would say blessed afternoon to everyone. Minister of ECYS and her support staff, my honorable colleagues, and the people of Sint Maarten viewing and listening online. I also believe that when we speak about matters like this, that we should be able to prepare properly, that we should be able to receive the presentation, discuss it if needed within factions, and also be well prepared because it's an important matter. So if that can be taken into account in general and also in regards to future meetings, that will be appreciated. And I therefore also support what my colleague MP Webster brought forward. That being said, my questions therefore are very global, but I do think of importance. First of all, as I went through the presentation and listened to what was brought forward by the ministry, I must say that the results do make me very sad. I myself, I speak English, but I know that sometimes my pronunciation of words can be better, so I do learn every day, and I have my MPs assisting with that as well. So, you know, you learn. But to see the results that I'm seeing in the schools, yeah, it makes me sad, and I believe that it's important to know, okay, what will be done next, but I will come to that after. But I also believe what plays a role is when a child goes to school and they're not focused because of the fact that they are hungry, for example, that contributes to certain results as well. So therefore, I want to tie in the question in regards to the structured breakfast program, which was discussed in collaboration with, I think, facilitating with the Friends side, if there's an update in regards to that. Also, going to school but not being fully accepted, and I'm bringing that forward again, seeing the recent visit in Aruba and also seeing that also there it plays a role in the schools, that kids go to school with the natural hair but are not happy with the natural hair, are feeling that they're being discriminated with their own natural hair, and also seeing that on Sint Maarten it seems that that still is happening. And I believe that also is connected to the performance of the children. I would like to know if there is an update in regards to the position of the schools in collaborating and making sure that all children are accepted. Then I go to the most important part, I believe. It was mentioned by the ministry, investing in time. And I do believe that investing in time is very important, and that I would like to know the position of the ministry in regards to members of parliament investing time, because I know, for example, that during Literacy Month, we invest time by going into the schools, but that's only during the month of literacy. And I know I myself, and I know other MPs as well, go into the schools on other occasions, or we're going into the schools on other occasions in regards to reading to children. And if I focus on myself, through you, Mr. Chairman, I launched a project in regards to tackling this matter in regards to the literacy level, and then I'm focusing on the Dutch and English part, where I do believe I can assist, for example, in reading Dutch, and I know others can maybe assist also in reading English. But to receive, for example, volunteers in regards to that matter, and for it not to be seen, for example, or can be seen, or feelings that it might be seen as political, I would like to know what is being done by the ministry to create that time, to make sure that that time that it's open to be invested in, because I agree that time should be invested, but if it is difficult to enter into the schools to give your time, I would like to know the position of the ministry to create a roster, maybe through the ministry, to get volunteers and invest time other than only during September month. So I would like to know the position of the ministry in regards to that, if the ministry is open to do so, if the ministry is already doing that, because I saw in the presentation that it was mentioned, if I go back to the point that was said, key recommendations, target public school interventions. So one of the interventions can be, as mentioned, investing your time by reading. So is that being done, or is the ministry open to do so, or is the ministry welcoming MPs to do so on behalf of the ministry, or assisting the ministry with that? And then the last part, MP Westcott Williams already said so, but I would like to mention the assistance based on Article 43 of the Charter. I know education is a country landsaangelegenheid, but seeing that the numbers are quite shocking, and this has been something that has been going on for years, has it been looked into on a kingdom level, and then especially in regards to the second part of Article 43, education can be seen and should be seen as a fundamental right, and when that right is not, the children on Sint Maarten are not getting the proper assistance in making sure that that right is fully executed, I do believe that it should become a kingdom matter in regards to giving the assistance that is needed, seeing that there is maybe a lack of assistance. So what is being done in regards to that? Next to conversations, are they being had? And if they are being had, what clarity has been coming out of that, or will further consultation in that regard take place? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. We now move on to the following MP. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one more point to the Minister of ECYS. I think the presentation didn't do no justice, and I'll explain why. Just comparing 2023 and 2025 does not give me a realistic overview of how we got there and why we are here today. So what I would have liked to see in the presentation is maybe the last 10 years, if the statistics is available, and how we actually got here to this point, because, and what is the norm? Not only the norm with the US, but in the Netherlands and Aruba, Curacao, just comparisons so we know exactly where we're at and where we're going, or where we want to go. Because when I hear now some speak, it almost sounds like this is a problem that just occurred today. And that is yammer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I now see MP Arian would like the floor. MP Arian, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I heard some of my other colleagues had some comments regarding the report and the meeting being scheduled. And in this instance, I don't necessarily blame the minister in the instance, because I think the presidium, the chair, they're in control of the meeting. So if we are booking a meeting to discuss a report, but the report isn't in, then don't book the meeting. It just, to me, is just logical. So this is a complaint we've been having already about meetings being called and not having information, etc. So again, I look to the presidium to have discussions with the minister and actually book them in the chairs to book the meetings properly regarding ministers coming in and having reports. So we don't have to have a discussion in the meeting about, oh, we need more time, we need more time. The report is over 150 pages for one, another one is 150 pages. I've only gotten to go through the one for group 3. So I haven't gone through the group 4, the group 5 one. Regarding the presentation and the data given thus far, I think that you know, we see it a lot in public that we don't give our own locals enough kudos. Because when I look at the presentation and I go back to a book from Dr. Rhoda Arundel, which is Culture, Identity in St. Maarten, which was published in 2014, the data in that book that I've read, 12 years later now, is being vindicated by the report we have today. Because when I listen to the presentation, but even in particular, when I go into the report, especially on page, I had a page written on page 54, 55, in the report it states already that the English streams students are performing better than the Dutch-speaking streams. Also, if you look at the minister mentioned the home language, so it says also that the students that speak their vernacular at home English are also performing better in those areas, and not by a little bit, by a lot. So that we are doing an injustice then to our students then by not then focusing on English stream. So for example, going back to the book from Dr. Arundel, the book suggests that students and teachers are being victimized by our educational system when the vernacular is ignored or stigmatized. This happens because the language students naturally use at home and in the community is often not acknowledged or accepted in school. In our report that we have, it shows that the English instructed pupils significantly outperform the Dutch ones. So you have it was the recognition mastery, 79% versus 50%. So the data is there. So when we having discussions today about what are the plans, we ask them, so what are the plans? What are the plans? So then are we now going to then focus more then on our home language? It also states in the report that the primary home language, 74% of students, while Dutch is 5% again. And every page 54, page 55, page 26, all these different pages go back to the same thing, that the language of instruction versus the language we naturally speak, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. So I think the decision for us as MPs, as a government, is there already. We don't have to ask the question anymore. And again, we could go back 12 years ago when the book from Dr. Arundel already stated that already. So we have to now decide, well, what do we want to do as a country going forward? In addition to that, it states in the presentation from the minister mentioned that, you clearly see subsidized schools outperform public schools. So me as a parent now, why would I put my child in a public school when my chances of success for my child is less? So I could imagine in August, September coming up, based on this meeting today, we're going to have an influx of persons who want to either transfer their students to subsidized schools or persons who want to go to subsidized schools. Because I can't imagine, as a parent, me wanting then to put my student or child in a position where the chance of failure is higher. Why would I do that? So we don't have time, actually, right, not to find solution as fast as possible. Because again, why would I put my child in a position to lose when the data is clear? The data is clear. I have a chance, I have 20% chance higher of succeeding if I put my child in this school. And in this report, what I wish we had a little bit more data in the report where I could have identified exactly which schools. So I think they say in the report they had 16 schools that were part of this report. And I'm pretty sure if we could have identified exactly which schools, we would have seen more than likely Hillside School, right at the top with success. Why? When you go to the school, when I go to Hillside School, teachers there are very happy, the school is clean, they have everything accessible, everything is there for them. So Minister, maybe even off the record, I would like to know which schools are performing best, even among the subsidized schools. So we have public schools, we know they're performing less in comparison to the subsidized schools, but even among the subsidized schools, I would really want to know which one of those are performing the best, because then we have even more data, right? Because then the data then will show, okay, we have subsidized schools, they perform better than public schools, but among the best, we have these. And again, if it shows like a school like again, I'll call Hillside School because I know when we were there, that was a school I was, let's say, the most happy in terms of teachers, right? Then we have the model already. We know already then to have students perform better, we have the model school already. What does this school have? They have all the equipment. They have all the things in the classroom. They have teachers, helpers in the classroom. So we have the model already. So we already know the standard to go to be able to succeed based on the report that's here already. Again, we didn't get to go through the second report. Again, based on the report we have in front of us now, based on the data we have in front of us now, as also mentioned by another MP about teacher salaries, Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman. When we were there, we left in the Council of Ministers the last discussion, and now the now Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister was also part of the whole discussion regarding the fact that teachers can't grow in scale. They can't go from A to B or C or whatever. We created a very simple formula to apply to allow them to go. And basically, we were saying, listen, whatever your scale is now, allow them to go. Okay, they get stuck at 20, allow them to be able to just go based on the same percentage down. So, Minister, is that a possibility just to have a simple calculation done to allow them to be able to grow? Because that is one of the reasons. A lot of teachers, they get a master's degree and they can't go in a better position. They're stuck in a position for a very long time. I think as a government, as a parliament, we have our hands full to be able to do better for our students. And I look forward to the feedback from the minister and the plans and the answers to my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Arian. I now see that we have MP Waiver. MP Waiver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Minister and also to the staff for providing the information here today. I think we have to be kind of careful when we make statements on the floor of Parliament stating that public education is less than. I think if we look at former FBE results, we've had top students perform that came from public education. You know, and this is recently, so it's not that they're not all performing. There is data there to show too that those schools also are capable, and they do have students that are capable to perform at a high level. So we must be careful to generalize based on one report that has been done. I must say as well that I think having been in the school system in the past as well. The home experience, and I think that is the data that came out of this report, the home experience is something that is so important. I think a lot of pressure is put on the schools to do a lot of the work that, because I remember before you had a lot of schools giving homework as well, but the social aspect of St. Maarten has changed as well. It would have been nice also to have a question or to see how much of these students came from single-parent homes, for instance, to know what the social aspect would have been, how many persons have 2 or more jobs, parents. So these are also things that are affecting the ability of parents to give more to their children, and therefore also sometimes parents have to take 2 jobs to be able to send their child to afternoon school, for instance, you know, where they can get that extra help that's needed. But I do not fully agree in a sense, because when we say that public schools are less or are not performing as well. I think when we look at FBE reports from the past as well, that we can see that they have performed. But of course, more needs to be done to enhance the teaching experience in our public schools, definitely. I know as well that subsidized schools have their own grievances as well and are going through a big turnaround when it comes to teachers as well, that you see teachers relocating from one school to the next within the subsidized schools or between the subsidized schools as well. And I think what MP Roseburg also mentioned with the bullying from certain schools as to appearance of children does play a big aspect as well when it comes to the students and how they feel and how when a student is feeling comfortable in their own skin, they can perform comfortably, you know. So with that said, that'll be all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Weaver. I next see MP Lewis. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the, as a predecessor, as a former Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, it wouldn't be good that I stay here and only be silent, Minister. Lord, I believe this meeting should have been a closed-door meeting. I really believe that this presentation should have been closed door, especially with the results and the data that I've gotten today. Minister, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. But to the students listening, Mr. Chairman, education is the key to success. Education is the key to success. We can come with all the different type of scenarios, how much parents working 2 jobs, etc. My mother got me at the age of 15, 16 years old. And I'm here today. I'm a living example that taking your education serious, you will land in places. So to those children out there, again, education is the key to success. Minister, because the content that was mentioned, as I said, that you also mentioned that is troubling, I hope that you have a strong team advocating and coming with initiatives on how we can make education attractive again. Because this is sad. Many of us can come about the books from Miss Arundel, I stand for it, etc. But when you look across the border, for example, I don't speak French, but my children went to French school and they speak French. So what is wrong? Where are we over here going wrong? That is the question. I have also spoken to many parents and many students that have also given me the information or given me the indication that the teachers today that we have today only works for a salary. They do not pay much interest into their interests in education. They come to school and they want to go home. And I understand as well when teachers are being underpaid or their salaries are not fixed, and those things can bring discouragement. But the children who are the future leaders of tomorrow needs their full attention. I ain't come here to step on nobody's toes, but the reality is the reality. Everybody have to put in their work to make sure that our leaders of tomorrow are brought up to par. I couldn't speak Dutch either, but I make it my business to learn to speak the people language because that is the nationality that I carry. So whether it's in English or in Dutch, whatever stream your children are going to, I have seen many Haitian children, many Latin children went to Havo and VWO and studied Dutch. So something is going wrong today. Thank you for the data that was given today, Minister. Anytime that you need us to caucus as Parliament, including myself individually, I am willing. Whether a committee needs to be put together, that we can bring some type of initiative to make education attractive again, I'm also willing, because this is sad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. Sorry, MP Lewis. Apologies, how could I make that mistake? We now move on to MP Webster. MP Webster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some time to look and also listen to some of my colleague MPs, and I heard where an MP mentioned that maybe the children in the Dutch stream were performing less than the children in the English stream. I also was of that assumption, but when I look now at some figures here with the subtask, the Dutch versus the English, I see where the Dutch was at 80%, and then it went to 88%, and then in the English stream, it was 22 and it went to 78. So you see where the Dutch schools were actually seem to, according to this, have been performing better. But again, I don't have the time to sit down and really look at it good. And that's why I know without asking for another meeting, if we can come back, if the minister can come back with the answers, and then we have time to prepare more questions. There's also, it's not clear whether the subsidized schools are doing better than the public schools, but I see here something about in numeracy. It seems as if the subsidized schools might be doing better than the primary schools, but again, I have to go and research that. So again, my plea, let us take our time for this important matter and go through it thoroughly, and then we can ask the questions with good foundation. And to talk about Dr. Arundel's book, when the book first came out, I was one of the first persons to buy that book. I believe in what was written there. I just want to add that Dr. Linda Richardson also, before Dr. Arundel, Dr. Linda Richardson also spoke about this when she was Minister of the Netherlands, Antilles Minister of Education. She also spoke about English as a first language for education in the in the Windward Islands. Thank you for now.
Thank you, MP Webster. We now move on to MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to preface my next question on what I stated earlier, and that is that I do support the request by several members of Parliament to have the opportunity to delve into and potentially dissect the report before us. However, that is only for the edification of the members of Parliament to go discuss a report that has been presented on what the status is. So again, I preface my question that I'll come with on that statement. I support that and would never want to take away from any member of Parliament the opportunity to delve into or do a deep dive into a report that we have received, especially on education. However, given the comments regarding this meeting, I want to state that, like the convocation indicates, the minister asked Parliament to come and make a presentation to share the results and discuss measures to improve this situation. For me, that last part there is more important than dissecting the report before us, because the report is what it is. That's the situation the reporters encountered when they did this. However, that part there, and I don't believe that we have heard sufficiently about these particular measures that are to be employed. And if they can't be employed, and this is what I want to get to, then why? Why can't they? Are there projections for measures to be taken that due to the lack of funds or whatever have you cannot be taken, is my question. So for me, it's okay, we got a report, we know, we could delve into it, we could dissect it, and make sure that we understand what it is saying and there's no confusion about the interpretation. That I agree with, but on the other hand, now that we have that report with the results, what are some of the measures that we can take? And this is what we need from the ministry. In connection with those measures to be taken, every so often, every couple of years, reports are done about the state of education on St. Maarten. One of them done a couple of years ago, of course, cited the very real lack, for whatever reasons, of parental involvement. And then a program for parental involvement was established. And are there any such programs bringing parents into the schools, training parents to, unfortunately, to be parents, and how can they get involved with their children and the children's schoolwork. So are there such programs still ongoing in the different schools? One, and is this a focus point for the ministry going forward in connection with the reports that we have had? So, Mr. Chairman, those are my two additional questions and comments. I want to focus on the matter of what do we do now? What can we do now? And talking about parents, and again, I'm going to stress, this is something that we need to involve the ministry that is over social development to be part of, to collaborate with, because it is one thing just to look at the results of our children, but if we don't look at the environment for too many of our children, then I think, again, we're going to take measures, so to speak, and we will be lacking a very, very important part, and that is the social, and I might add, social economic environment of too many of our children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Now move on to MP Durant. MP Durant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the Minister for the presentation as well. Mr. Chairman, I must say, although it has been repeated here, it is a trend, however, especially during this governing term and the last one even, where we have to discuss important topics and we either get the information the day of or currently, while even in the meeting, sometimes with the Ministry of Finance, you receive documentation to go over meetings. And I find it quite unfortunate because this is something so important. You're talking one report of 153 pages and the other one of 128 pages. There's no way that anybody in here was able to go through those documents so far to prepare properly to come with this point. The fact is, though, we have a problem. And when I go through the documents, and even now listening to one of my colleagues where MP Weaver mentioned that the report is, the former speaker, which is my colleague, MP Irion, is stating that the public school is less than. I don't remember the MP ever saying that, and I think he can defend himself, but I feel it's important because just now you're going to have a soundbite with a narrative being spun out there. The entire National Alliance faction is a product of M. Genevieve de Weaver School, Mr. Chairman. So a public school. So how can we be indicating that a public school is not good or less than? The MP is referencing the report that was presented by the minister, where the report is indicating how the public schools are performing. It's no secret, because if we put our hand over our eyes and put on the blindfold, as I believe my colleague is indirectly doing, MP Weaver, then we're not acknowledging that we have a problem. We are hiding behind the fact that there is a problem. There's a problem, we need to solve the problem, and these are the ways by acknowledging the facts, whereas some people have an advantage and some others have a disadvantage based on the data that was provided by the minister. These are not fabricated numbers, and I believe a lot of time and man hours went into this. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would also like to state the fact that I think sometimes we forget that COVID played a major role in what we are dealing with here today. Just give an example. Imagine you were in 5th grade and the coronavirus hit. You were then sent home, displaced. Then you had to continue the rest of the year outside of a classroom. Then you were promoted. Most of the children went over because of the circumstances. Now you're in 6th grade, the exam. You're in pre-exam, now you're in exam. When the dust finally settled, you're in the 2nd term of the 1st year. So therefore, there's a big gap in terms of what the results and the performances has been since then. So therefore, I am not sure if, through you to the minister, if anywhere during this entire study, those points were looked at to evaluate potential results of that. because there's still people still dealing with PTSD as grown adults from COVID. So I can imagine what a student may be going through, especially having all those different gaps. I gave the prime example of 5th grade because that's pre-exam, then you have exam, and then your introduction into something completely new. So therefore, I know that there's a miss in that. So it will become a case where the strong will survive, meaning those that are a bit more advanced will get through, will survive, maybe level up by then, but others will have an issue. So my question is, Mr. Chairman, through you to the Minister, was this anywhere as a discussion point in terms of what the effects of COVID-19 had on these results? Also, Mr. Chairman, again, I just want to end by saying that most of the questions were already posed. Those are the questions that come off the top of your head, but I didn't have enough time to properly delve into the content of the report, which I think is very important, and I think is very important to the Minister and the Ministry as well, else we won't be sitting here. So therefore, I too would like to concur with my colleague MP Janssen Webster in terms of us coming back here to really go into it so that we can come out with concrete points, advice to the government. But I would also say I find it quite disappointing that the government requests the meeting, the government provide the report late, but the government didn't come with any solutions as to the way forward. So I'm hoping that maybe somewhere at the end of the tunnel there will be some solutions, but I can't understand how you can come to just discuss a problem and not indicate a kind of a stopper plan or some kind of indication of how we should or how the ministry is handling it, because I can't believe that the entire ministry isn't advising or giving any steps on the way forward. So therefore, that too is missing in my understanding for this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Duran. Next, we move on to MP Ottley. MP Ottley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister and her support staff. Mr. Chair, a couple of my colleagues hit the nail on the head, specifically 2 of them. There's a problem, and what now? We have to realize in this day and age, as political figures, as government personnel, when we bring presentations to the floor of Parliament, it goes possibly worldwide. I remember being in Holland and hearing the Prime Minister give statistics on illiteracy in St. Maarten, and it was embarrassing and shocked. And I was wondering, where did the Prime Minister get this information from? And today, when you hear this, a lot of us are shocked. But I have been one that have been practical. And I always say the data is always in front of us. We know there's a problem. We knew there was a problem. And what I hear today is reading and math and all of these things, and a lot of us are here, and we're missing the point. I'm hearing a lot of back and forth. I can care less right now who speak Dutch, who speak French, Spanish, all of those things. What are we going to do as members of Parliament? We have a job. I'm hearing, is it possible for us to assist? Do our job. And Madam and Mr. Chair, through you to the Honorable Minister, while I'm hearing math and all of these things, the problem we have is I'm not hearing carpentry, I'm not hearing mechanics, I'm not hearing vocational, I'm not hearing those things, because the reality of it is not everybody is meant to be doctors and lawyers and all of these things. And I say this because I have a friend who the school said his son was autistic, but his son is borderline genius. You ask him a math question, he don't use no pen, no paper, no calculator. He does it off the top of his head. But if we go on the school system with blinders on, you're going to take this kid who's a borderline genius, label him as autistic, and if the parent is not very much involved in the child's life or involved to push this child, the child gets lost on the wayside and then becomes another statistic. And I say that to say this, illiteracy rate and all of that does not exclude the potential of our community. And that is what I would like to hear from the ministry. So I already see all kind of stuff, memes and articles coming out on what is going on in St. Maarten as far as our literacy rate and the data. But what I would like to see behind it is what is St. Maarten's plan. Members just came back from Aruba. Thank God, in a way, this meeting is after. Because this would have been a big topic for our members to sit with Aruba, Curacao, and the Netherlands and face these numbers, because I know how I felt when the Prime Minister said a high number of illiterate persons in Sint Maarten. Diversification needs to be our main goal. Diversification. There's some carpenters, there's some mechanics, there's some scalemen, masons. A lot of these people did not graduate. Hence the reason, thank God, I repeat, thank God for NEPA that allows a lot of our men and women today to excel. They really do. So we have to move away from one-track mind, and while we push education and we push the traditional education, we need to understand in today's world, we have to build the country. And if education is not working for you, some of the most richest, successful persons, and I'm not promoting dropping out of college or school, but the reality is, if we promote proper entrepreneurship, some of the richest, most successful persons doesn't have a college degree to this day. So we have to promote country building and diversification. So I hope by the next time the minister comes back, I don't just hear on one track. Minister, and if it's not in your program, please take it up on behalf of the United People's Party and myself, diversification, and how can we include, like I said, I went to school in America. I graduated with persons who were in special ed education. They were removed from our system, placed in a different system, went to the same school, had break at the same time, and we graduated at the same time. What is happening here? People are falling to the wayside. So let us focus on diversification. I definitely will be working on something for diversification and sending it to the ministry for feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Ottley. Next, we have MP Arian. MP Arian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I realize some of our colleagues really needed more time to be able to prepare for today. But in addition to that, they're not even paying attention to the meeting and the presentation from the minister, because we have MP Waver mentioning that we have to be careful in terms of saying schools are less. I didn't indicate that. Mr. Chairman, to the minister, Minister, I would like you to be clear. In your presentation today, it's about data. This is a factual report. It's not your emotions, it's not your feelings, right? It's just data given based on the facts. And I realize that, you know, as members of parliament, at times we want to push our biases. So we mentioned, oh yes, when I went to school, I went to Dutch school and I did well. And that's fine for those of you that did well going to a Dutch school. But the data says something different. So is either we're going to get the data and work with it to be able to fix the problems, right? And even though it may be uncomfortable, it is uncomfortable seeing data that says, hey, we're not doing well, we have to improve here, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the data says. Or we want to, again, just confirm our biases and as MP Duran said, make the public feel something else different. No, this is the data. The data says it right here in the minister's presentation. Subsidized schools. Look right here. Mastery, 45%. Listening comprehension, 53%. Reading comprehension. That's not my words. I didn't do the research. That's the data from the government, all right? So let's not dilly-dally around the topic and actually say, hey, you know what? These are areas we need to improve. We have to have serious discussions going forward about language of instruction, serious discussions about how we're going to support public schools, because obviously the public schools are not doing as well as the subsidized schools. Why? Let's compare them. You know, MP York, I mean, yeah, mentioned to me just now, hey, you know, there's also this topic about, and it is true, and I told him too, it's going to be a very uncomfortable thing to say, but there's also a certain level of discrimination in terms of who could enter into subsidized schools, right? And I wasn't going to say, but that's a fact. There's certain individuals that apply to subsidized schools, they can't get in, so now we are forcing a certain group of persons only in certain schools. And that's what the data are going to show. So we could dilly-dally and try to, no, that's a fact. That's a fact. So we have to decide now, and that's what the minister also mentioned, we are going away from the current public school system to a similar system, I believe, for the public schools or the subsidized schools. And let's see then if it'll improve. But the data says it right here. And I'm saying, if I was a parent and I saw this meeting in Parliament today, I will be forcing myself to get my child into subsidized schools because of the data the government presented. And that's just a fact. And if you go deeper into the analysis, we don't have it here, and I'm asking the minister, if you go deeper into the analysis, I guarantee you, even among the subsidized schools, we're going to see the ones that have more support, maybe from certain parents that could put more money in, or have PTAs and get more money, etc. Or even if we do a survey and say, hey, look at the schools where teachers are most happy, we're going to see a correlation there also with students doing better. So you could run away from the data and hide, but the data can always be there. You can't change the facts. So, Minister, my position would be, right, how do we take this data, right, and make a plan that says, hey, this is the data, let's start to fill these gaps in. I expect to see in budget 2026, right, a budget that reflects us fixing this problem for this data. That's what I expect to see. A budget is supposed to be here in May, or June or July, whenever, right? I'm going to be holding you, Minister, accountable, right? Because we can't have this meeting today, and then when the budget comes around, I don't see it reflected in the budget. So I'm going to hold the ministry accountable to say, hey, how are we addressing the concerns we had, what today is, February 25th, 26th? I don't see it reflected in the budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Arian. I now see MP Lacroes would like the floor. MP Lacroes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And the previous speaker took the words right out of my mouth. But I'll go a little further. In order for me to see an increase in the budget for ECYS, we need a plan from the minister where she's going to spend these. But God forbid that we continue to cut the budget of education, seeing what happened in here today. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it. No way, no form, no sort. Don't even whisper that to me. Because what you will hear for the budget debate will be against. If the minister has a plan, please bring that plan to Parliament where and how she needs funding to deal with our education, because this is unacceptable. So to the Minister of Finance, please have a sit down with your Minister of Education and put it together. Put it together. We want revenue generating measures. If you don't have it, find it. We are tired of just, this makes no sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. I now see MP York has the floor. MP York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to yourself, Minister, support staff, colleagues, and the viewing public. Minister, I took a while through you, Mr. Chairman. I took a while to give any remarks because I really wanted to be cognizant of how I'm going to say the following. And I want to start off by saying that to you, Mr. Chairman, we all know the minister didn't sit down and do these tests for the students. The minister was not there 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and education is not something that just popped up yesterday on the radar, the problems that we have. Unfortunately, for the minister, she's in the seat right now, and through Mr. Chairman, it's expected that the ministry would come with some type of measures to fix this issue or start to fix this issue moving forward. And in saying that, it's not an overnight fix either. It's not a singular fix. It's not something you could press a button and it's simply done. So I do join my colleagues in saying this meeting deserves a follow-up. I actually don't think this meeting should be closed today, and it should be continued. But I would like to add to that request. In the presentation given today, a lot of data was shared. The minister basically explained what was on the presentation and on the slides, in the presentation and on the slides. But what I missed was the analysis of the numbers and the correlations and the conclusions of what these numbers mean across the board in the grander scheme of things. A simple example, on page slide 27, it spoke on 67% speak English at home, 61% speak Dutch at home, and these numbers can be significant, for example, for Dutch comprehension outcomes, language of instruction debates, etc. But for example, what I missed was whether, and the discussion has already organically been started between Dutch and English, for example, whether the Dutch results reflect language exposure or instruction quality, right? And that's not pointing a finger at either or, but is a discussion and a conclusion that can be had and can be pulled. I missed a lot of these analyses in the presentation. So what I would like to request upon reconvening this meeting, if we can steer the conversation more down, or if the minister can come with a presentation, updated presentation, more down that alley to where we can really get to the meat, more of the meat of this situation. Additional to that, I would like to add the question, what is the minister's take on these figures as it relates as well to the FBE system? Because we speaking a lot about English versus Dutch, but what about the FBE system in its totality? I know there's been an evaluation presentation done a while back. How do we move forward? Because, for example, we spoke on the cohort of students that during the COVID period, and of course they get promoted to the next grade, the next grade, the next grade, so on and so on. That's also as a result of FBE, because it's kind of learn at your own pace. But if we already know that that pace is already starting at a disadvantage, what are we doing within the system, or is the system conducive to the problems that we face in today? So I would like to know what's the minister's take on that. And as well, lastly, I heard a lot of colleagues saying that this presentation shocked them, and it's shocking, and we need to do something about it. But last year, when the minister was here, one of the meetings the minister came where she explained the minister had the same presentation for the state of the education report. Those numbers were shocking as well. And I can remember posing the question then, what's the plan? What are we going to do? What's the ministry going to do, for example? And the answer then was, MP, this is from the cohort of COVID, and we want to wait to see what the following years have to say before we come with any measures. And here we are today with another report basically saying the same thing. So we didn't have any measures then, or at least they were not shared with us then, and now we're having another presentation a year later, and I'm still not seeing any. Maybe the minister and the ministry has spoken on it internally, but it has not been shared with Parliament as yet. And I heard another colleague stating, like, okay, what can Parliament do, what we are going to do, but in order to know what we are going to do, we got to know what the minister's plan is and where's her shortcomings and shortfalls, or where does she need help. So I think that dialogue back and forth needs to start happening instead of just looking at data. Data, okay, it's great to know, it's great to have, but what are we, as what another MP said, MP West got to be exact, what are we going to do with that data? And lastly, on the last point, I think a lot of times the word synergy is deeply underrated in the whole government apparatus. And the minister, through Mr. Chairman, had a very good article, a very intriguing article on the topic of silos recently. And when you join silos with no synergy, you're going to get situations where, in this case, education is going to be cut. Because I can almost guarantee that in the budget 2027, based on articles I'm seeing this week, education is going to experience another cut, right? So I don't see, and we can easily say, okay, education, we should not be cutting education. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But what is, and I've been asking for this for over a year and a half, what is the holistic strategy of the government in its totality when it comes to visions pertaining to the individual ministries? Because a lot of ministries are doing ad hoc projects and ad hoc things that has indirect or indirect effects on other ministries. For example, I saw an article about the road fund. The current law, basically the road fund will be active the 1st of January 2027, and the current law constitutes 100% of the road tax going towards that law. Fine, that's 10 million guilders, right? Something like that, 10 million guilders. That's coming from the general coffers. And there are, for example, multiple reports from the General Audit Chamber warning, Mr. Chairman, to do it that way will be detrimental to the overall budget, which will be detrimental to the ministries underling, such as the Education Ministry. So we can easily say, yes, no more cutting, no more cutting, no more cutting. But if the ministers do not have synergy amongst themselves and continue to work in silos, the cutting will continue. So we can easily look and say education, education, education. But what is done in Vromi, what is done in Teat, what is done in VSA, what is done in Justice, all have effects on the Ministry of Education, and actually in all ministries, but in particular the Ministry of Education. So we have to just not only look at what's going on, what education is needed, but we also have to look and pay attention to what's going on in other ministries as well. If we're saying, if we really mean education should not receive any further cuts moving forward, which I agree with as well. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I would like to propose and request the minister to add presentation or to come with a separate presentation that we can delve deeper into these problems, but also start speaking about what we're going to do or what the ministry, starting with what the ministry's plan is or plans are, not to fix the problem, but to start addressing the problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP York. I now see MP Westcott Williams request the floor. MP Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up question to what I asked earlier regarding the socio-economic realities of many of our students. And I would like to know if from within the ministry or based on this research, there is any thought for further investigation into conditions such as dyslexia, etc., that might be considered going forward in how far this applies to Sint Maarten. We know, again, it's a worldwide thing, and depending on the results thereof, if specific interventions will be planned. So next to these numbers and figures that we have seen, is there any other research that, in collaboration with the Ministry of VSA, possibly for the research is being considered into matters such as that and the overall socioeconomic conditions of our students? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP. I was going to say Madam Chair, but thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Minister, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all committee members and non-members participating. You know, one of my colleagues stated that, how did we get here? And it's a very interesting question, and it's a broad-based question as well. I haven't had anybody mention technology, and technology, we need it. It has been helping us as a society, and I'm glad that the minister always also mentioned the various different countries that's also seeing drop in numbers as well. The more we use technology, the less we talk to each other, the less we pronunciate, the less we actually look in dictionaries, thesauruses, things like that. And I always believe that is on us as a society, as parents, big brothers, big sisters, cousins, you name it, to ensure that our kids, youth, learn. It's not solely the responsibility of schools. The small things that you can do in your household. I know when my daughter messages me, I make sure she messages me with complete sentences. I know when she talks to me, I make sure that she speaks to me in proper tenses. We know that, you know, multiple families work different jobs, and it might be difficult to be there all the time, but we can encourage the use of technology, the use of, for educational purposes. I myself, I have dictionary words that pop up on my phone all the time, every day. My aim this year is to learn Spanish, so I have Spanish apps that I use on a daily basis. So there's different technological tools that we could use to assist the schools, assist parents, but we just have to be cognizant and push the population in using these tools. So we have to also keep that in mind, that the use of technology, let's use it. They're called smartphones, smart devices. Let's use it to get smarter as well, not just sit there and, you know, use it for social media purposes. So with that being said, I'll go over to the minister to see if she needs time to deliberate, 5 minutes to deliberate her team. We adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome back to this Central Committee meeting number 2 of the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. Before we adjourn, Minister Gums took some time with her team to discuss the answers to the questions. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you again to the members of the committee for allowing me to present these results to them. And yeah, it is very worrying, and they're very worrying results, as everyone has highlighted. In caucusing with my team, and also of being very cognizant of the statements made on requesting time to peruse the report from MPs Jansen-Webster, Duran, Irian, etc., I would like to return on the 30th of March to give everyone the time to peruse the report in its totality, because it is quite lengthy, it is quite technical, and then we will return with the answers to the questions and to receive any other questions that may be asked. 30th.
30th. 30th. Thank you, Minister. I now look to the members of Parliament. As it was stated that multiple members would like this meeting to continue to get their thoughts together and be able to peruse the documents properly. MP York, I see your request on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to see if it's possible for efficiency for the next meeting, if it would be possible, aside from getting the time to peruse the reports, if the minister in the meantime can send the answers to some of the questions in writing, for us not to have like it's a CC, but a whole other round waiting on the answers for the questions when we could have them already in the meantime, so that we could be ahead of the curve for the next meeting. So I don't know if that's possible, but that's a request to the minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP. MP Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a request if the minister can offer more than one date besides the 30th of March, if there are any other possible dates. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For MP York, if you could clarify, how far in advance would the members like the answers to some of the questions in writing? And regarding an additional date after the 30th of March? Anytime after that? Before Carnival?
Thank you, Minister. MP York, the minister asked you a question. How long before the meeting would you like your questions?
As soon as possible, but it's based on what the minister can provide.
Thank you. MP?
We'll work on probably a week before the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. So we'll check with the schedule with Parliament for the dates that the minister has given, March 30th, and we'll look forward to the minister's answering of the questions as soon as possible before then. If there are no more questions, no more deliberations, I would like to thank the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Ms. Melissa D. Gums, and her sports staff for her presence here today and for providing the necessary information. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting, and I would like to, well, not the end, we're adjourning agenda point number 2. So this meeting, agenda point number 2, will be adjourned until a later date. And because of that, I thank all of you for your participation, and I hereby adjourn this meeting. The meeting is adjourned.